Better English podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the How to Better English podcast. I'm Liam.
And I'm Emma. It is wonderful to have you all joining us again today for a really fascinating and deeply personal topic that affects almost everyone, especially those of us navigating the complexities of learning a new language.
Absolutely, Emma. But before we dive into today's lesson, we need to do the important bit. If you are enjoying the content we produce, please take just 2 seconds right now to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up or a like, depending on where you are listening. It genuinely helps us reach more learners like you.
And even more important than subscribing, we want to hear from you directly. Your comments are the lifeblood of this community. We read every single comment and we truly love hearing where you're listening from and what your journey looks like.
That's right. So, here's our specific question for today. Where are you tuning in from today? And more importantly, what is one major goal you have for your English this month? Is it speaking more confidently, mastering a specific grammar point, or simply listening more? Tell us in the comments.
We are very pleased to read your comments, so please don't be shy. Let us know. Now, on to today's discussion. Liam, the title for today is English Podcast for Easy English Conversation, Why You Care So Much, and How to Stop.
It's a heavy title, Emma, but so relevant. We are tackling the persistent, nagging fear that holds so many English learners back. The fear of judgment, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of what others think of their pronunciation or their vocabulary choices. In short, why do we care so much about others' opinions, and how do we begin to dismantle that concern?
Exactly. This fear isn't just about English, it's a fundamental human trait. We are social creatures, and historically, fitting in meant survival. But in modern life, this instinct often becomes a major roadblock, especially when we are trying to do something difficult, like mastering a new language. When you speak English, you are exposing a vulnerable part of yourself. You are not only language, you are performing it for an audience, whether it is one person or many.
And that performance anxiety is palpable. I have spoken to so many learners who tell me they know the word, they know the grammar rule, but the moment they open their mouth in front of a native speaker or even another learner, their mind goes blank. The primary reason is that self-imposed pressure to sound perfect. They are caring too much about the reaction they will receive.
Let's delve into the psychology of this overcaring, Liam. Where does this fear truly originate? For most people, it stems from a desire for acceptance and a fear of rejection. When we were children, approval from our parents or peers was vital. That wiring doesn't disappear when we become adults. We transfer that need for validation onto our professional and social interactions.
And when you are communicating in a second language, the stakes feel higher because you already feel slightly less competent than you do in your native tongue. So, any perceived failure, a mispronounced word, a grammatical error is magnified into proof that you are not good enough.
We call this the spotlight effect. It's the phenomenon where people tend to believe they are being noticed and judged more than they actually are. When you make a mistake, you might replay that moment in your head for hours thinking, "Oh, everyone noticed how I mixed up there and there."
But the truth is, most people are far too preoccupied with their own lives, and often their own mistakes, to dedicate significant mental energy to scrutinizing your performance. If a native speaker hears you stumble, their thought is usually fleeting. Maybe they mentally correct it and move on. Or maybe they don't notice at all, focusing instead on the meaning you are trying to convey.
That's a crucial distinction. Caring too much often means we are operating under the assumption that other people's thoughts are as intense and critical as our own internal critic. They are not. If they understand your meaning, 99% of the conversational goal has been achieved. The small errors are often negligible.
Now, let's talk specifically about how this overcaring manifests in the language learning journey. It creates avoidance behavior. Because the perceived pain of judgment is so high, learners will actively avoid speaking opportunities. They will stay silent in meetings, decline social invitations where English is the primary language, or stick only to written communication.
And this avoidance is highly detrimental because language acquisition is fundamentally a practical skill. You cannot improve without practice, and practice inevitably involves making mistakes. By avoiding the potential for mistakes, you are avoiding the necessary steps for growth. You create a psychological barrier where confidence is tied to perfection, which is unattainable.
It traps learners in a cycle. They wait to speak until they feel ready, but they can only feel ready by speaking. So they remain silent. Their skills stagnate, and the fear grows larger and more intimidating over time. We have to break that cycle by redefining what caring actually means.
We need to shift the focus from external validation caring about what others think of us to internal validation caring about our own progress and goals. If your goal is to communicate effectively, then every conversation, even the clumsy ones, is a win.
That requires a monumental mental shift. It means consciously acknowledging that feeling of anxiety when you're about to speak and saying, I know I feel judged right now, but that feeling is not necessarily based in reality, and even if I make a mistake, it will be a tool for future learning.
Let's explore some practical strategies for overcoming this pervasive fear of judgment. The first step, and perhaps the hardest, is what we call exposure therapy, or simply leaning into the discomfort. You must deliberately seek out situations where you know you will feel slightly uncomfortable.
Start small. Maybe it's asking a simple question to a stranger in English, like asking for directions or ordering coffee using a full, slightly complicated sentence structure. Record yourself speaking and listen back not to judge your errors, but to appreciate the courage it took to produce that speech.
And when you inevitably make a mistake because mistakes are guaranteed, not optional, you must treat that mistake as data, not destiny. A mistake is just information that tells you where you need to focus your attention next. It doesn't define your intelligence or your capability as a learner. It defines where your knowledge gaps currently exist.
I often encourage learners to adopt the mindset of a scientist. A scientist doesn't give up when an experiment fails. They analyze why it failed and adjust the variables. When you misuse a preposition, you don't say, I am a bad English speaker. You say, aha, my understanding of prepositions in this context needs refinement.
The language we use internally is incredibly powerful. Stop using self-defeating language that reinforces the caring about others' opinions. Instead of thinking, they must think I sound stupid, reframe it as, I am practicing a difficult skill and I am prioritizing communication over perfection.
Another powerful technique is setting boundaries against external validation. This means recognizing that you are learning English for your reasons, not to impress others. Your motivation should be intrinsic. Are you learning to access better opportunities, to travel, to connect with family? Focus on that core goal.
If someone corrects you, and this is a difficult moment for many learners, try to develop a thick skin but also a grateful attitude. If the correction is offered kindly, view it as a free lesson. If the correction is offered rudely or dismissively, understand that their reaction says more about their character and lack of empathy than it does about your competence. Their opinion is merely noise.
That's a key insight, Emma. We often grant too much authority to the opinions of others, especially if those others are native speakers. But being a native speaker doesn't make someone an expert on language learning pedagogy, or even on being a good communicator. They might just be someone who happened to be born in a certain location.
We must learn to differentiate between helpful feedback and unhelpful criticism rooted in rudeness or impatience. Helpful feedback addresses the mechanics of the language and helps you improve. Unhelpful criticism addresses your character or implies lack of ability. We discard the latter instantly.
Let's look at the concept of authenticity, which is intrinsically linked to stopping the over-caring. When you care too much about others' opinions, you are constantly filtering your speech. You select easier words, avoid complex thoughts, or even adopt a persona you think others want to see. This prevents you from expressing your true, complex self.
Authenticity means speaking your mind, even if you do it imperfectly. It means being willing to use a complex vocabulary word you just learned, knowing you might mispronounce it, because you value the precision of that word over the potential embarrassment. True conversation requires vulnerability.
Think of it this way. Which speaker is more engaging? The one who speaks flawlessly but rigidly, only using simple structures that they know are safe, or the one who speaks with passion and originality, even if they occasionally miss a verb tense? We connect with passion and authenticity, not robotic perfection.
And remember, the audience you are worried about, the people judging you, are often facing their own version of this struggle in their lives. Perhaps they are trying a new skill, starting a new job, or navigating a difficult relationship. Everyone is navigating perceived judgment. Recognizing this shared human experience can reduce the perceived threat.
Let's discuss the role of preparation. While we want to encourage spontaneous speaking, sometimes over-caring can be managed by feeling slightly more prepared for common conversational situations. If you know you struggle with introductions, practice those sentences until they flow naturally.
This preparation is not about achieving perfection. It's about lowering the cognitive load. If the first minute of the conversation feels automatic, you free up mental energy to focus on the actual content and meaning rather than focusing on the fear of the opening sentence. It's a practical application of confidence building.
And let's extend this mindset to the learning environment itself. If you are in an English class, the other students are your allies, not your judges. They are all experiencing the same uncertainty. The classroom should be the safest place to fail because everyone else is doing the same.
If you notice a classmate hesitate, rather than judging them, recognize that moment as a reflection of the difficulty of the task and use that moment to offer encouragement. Cultivating an encouraging attitude towards others often makes us more forgiving toward ourselves. This reciprocal generosity is powerful.
We must also address the common pitfall of comparing ourselves to others. Learners often look at advanced speakers and think, why can't I speak like them? This comparison breeds insecurity and intensifies the caring about others' opinions.
But what you often don't see is the thousands of hours that advanced speaker invested, the numerous mistakes they made, and the sheer volume of awkward conversations they endured to reach that level. Their current competence is the result of past mistakes they overcame, not a lack of fear. They simply learned to move forward despite the fear.
So, when you look at someone advanced, don't use them as a measuring stick for your current level. Use them as proof that the process works. Use them as an inspiration for where consistent effort can take you. This shifts the comparison from destructive judgment to constructive motivation.
Let's summarize the core philosophy here. We are moving from a performance mindset to a communication mindset. The performance mindset says, I must sound flawless or people will judge me negatively. The communication mindset says, my primary goal is to successfully transmit my ideas, and I value connection over correctness.
And that communication mindset fundamentally changes how you perceive your role in a conversation. Instead of being the student waiting for a grade, you become an equal participant contributing to a shared experience. When you genuinely focus on listening to the other person and understanding their points, your focus automatically shifts away from your own internal anxiety.
That's because the attention resources of your brain are finite. If you are spending 80% of your energy scrutinizing your own output, did I use the correct article? Did I conjugate that verb right? You have only 20% left for active listening and genuine engagement.
But if you consciously redirect that energy outward, focusing on the nuance of the other person's argument, asking follow-up questions, expressing true curiosity, the internal critical voice quiets down because the brain is too busy processing incoming information. This is a practical method for distracting your anxiety.
A final, powerful strategy to stop overcaring is to assign a specific, limited time for reflection, but not during the conversation. When the conversation is over, you can briefly revisit it. Think, what did I do well? What is one thing I want to improve next time?
This structured reflection prevents the endless, anxious rumination. You put a 5-minute timer on your reflection. If you made a mistake with a plural noun, write it down, practice the correct version 3 times, and then consciously move on. You've processed the data, and now you have implemented the correction. The mistake has served its purpose.
If we don't do this, if we allow ourselves to spiral into self-criticism, we risk internalizing the mistake as a failure of character rather than an opportunity for learning. That spiral reinforces the fear of judgment because we are essentially judging ourselves far more harshly than anyone else ever could.
So, the journey to becoming a fluent and confident English speaker is fundamentally a journey of self-acceptance. It's accepting that imperfection is inherent to learning and that your value as a communicator lies in your willingness to connect, not your ability to be flawless.
We must embrace the messiness of conversation. Real human communication is messy, disjointed, and often grammatically imprecise, even among native speakers. If you are aiming for perfect textbook English in a casual conversation, you are aiming for something that doesn't actually exist in the real world.
And the irony is, the less you care about the small mistakes, the faster you will improve. Because when you stop fearing the mistake, you start speaking more freely, and that sheer volume of output accelerates your learning exponentially. Confidence is not the reward for perfection. Confidence is the result of taking action despite imperfection.
To wrap up this detailed discussion on caring too much, we hope you realize that this feeling is universal, but it is also manageable. You have the power to reframe your failures, prioritize your internal goals, and minimize the weight you place on external validation.
Let's do a quick recap of our key strategies today. First, we discussed the spotlight effect, realizing that people care far less about your mistakes than you imagine they do. They are focused on themselves.
Second, we emphasize the importance of treating mistakes as data, not destiny. Mistakes are necessary information for growth. Be the scientist, not the judge.
And third, prioritize communication and authenticity over perfection. Speak your true mind, even if it comes out clumsy. Connection beats flawless grammar every single time.
Take those principles with you into your next English conversation. Remember to comment below and tell us where you are tuning in from and what your primary English goal is this month. We genuinely look forward to reading your goals and supporting your journey.
We do indeed. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the How to Better English podcast.
Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning. And most importantly, start caring a little less about what others think and a lot more about your own progress.
Goodbye for now.
Bye, everyone.